morning. I now call the May 18th, 2023 Administrative Briefing and Work Session to order at 9 a.m. Please silence your electronic devices to avoid disturbing others. I now ask the School Board Attorney to explain the rules for this work session. Good morning, Attorney Powers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This work session is a public meeting as defined in Florida's Sunshine Law. The Board is dedicated to full transparency in its meetings and its work. In compliance with the Sunshine Law, the Board has adopted uniform meeting procedures, including the right for citizens to participate. The Board will allow public comment regarding any work session item listed on today's agenda at the appropriate time. Speakers must fill out a request form located in the lobby and hand it to the Board Clerk. After the Board and Superintendent have completed their discussion on a particular agenda item, the Board Clerk will call speakers' names in the order received. Each speaker will have 3 minutes. As required by the Sunshine Law, the Board must maintain orderly conduct and proper decorum throughout this meeting. Speakers may criticize subject matter and decisions in a respectful manner, but not people. Finally, speakers must be very careful not to violate the privacy rights of others, especially students and their family members, by mentioning their names or other identifying information. Thank you for your attention to these important rules.
Thank you, Attorney Powers. We will now begin the work session with the Superintendent's Administrative Briefing. Good morning, Dr. Gullett.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the Board. Nice to see you. I have a couple of briefing items before we begin with the agenda. And first is I want to do a shout out. Last night I was at Fordham to celebrate and recognize our graduates of the University of Florida Coaching Academy. It's the first time we've done that. And to hear and interact with our coaches complete their program. It's quite rigorous. It's evidence-based. And to hear veteran coaches talk about how energizing and inspiring it was and impactful to our classrooms was just such an inspiration. So I want to do another shout out to them and thank them for their service there. When I asked them how we could support them, they said everyone needs to go through this process and how transforming it was to them and their careers and their service. So I thank them for all that they've done and congratulate them again for the great work. And then also the next item is we have today Ben Whitehouse and Danielle Livengood. Board, they're going to provide some updates on curriculum and also how we're progressing through our assessment window. We are all anxiously waiting that to be finalized, and we'll of course bring back the outcomes to you at a later date, but we will have some updates today so that if you have any questions, we're happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Campbell, board members, Superintendent Dr. Gullett. Appreciate you all giving us time to share some updates of where we are right now. So, as you know, this is a new year for assessments for us. This is the first year of the new Florida Assessment for Student Thinking, or FAST, which is provided to all of our students from pre-K up through 10th grade. The window for the third progress monitoring, this is the one that is a part of school accountability or school grades, began on May 1st. So we started testing right at the beginning of the month with English Language Arts, and we have tested English Language Arts and math the first couple of weeks. As a reminder, all these assessments are computer-based, so the advantage this year is that we are getting immediate results. We're getting data back within 24 hours of those students taking assessments, which allows teachers and school administrators to then start making some informed decisions for leading into the summer and leading into next school year as well. Also a reminder, this year we did not do a writing assessment. We did field test writing, but writing is not going to be included in our English Language Arts scores. Next year, writing will be back in the spring, and it's unclear how that's going to be calculated into the school scores yet, but we will see that again next year. This week we began our science, civics, and U.S. history assessments, and those results, even though we are computer-based in some of those, still do not return until June. So even though we have ELA and math data coming in now, with the rest of those assessments will not be in until June 30th at the latest, so we'll have to wait on those scores. This summer, the state is going to be doing scale score setting, because right now the scores that we're getting back for English Language Arts and math are based on the old FSA scale scores. So the new scale scores will be established this summer and will be taken to the State Board of Education in October. And what that means is once those scale scores are approved, those new cut scores for levels will be retroactively applied to the data that we're getting right now for spring scores. So a student could potentially change a level based on the new cut scores. The The two exceptions to that, one, any of our 10th graders this year who took the FAST ELA for graduation purposes can bank those scores. So regardless of what they set the new level 3 cut score for 10th grade ELA to be next year, anybody who earned a 3 right now can keep it. And that will be an alternate graduate score for those students. And then, of course, any of our 3rd graders who scored a level 2 or above and would automatically promote to 4th grade. If the scores change and a 2 became a 1, that would not be retroactively applied. Those students would not no longer be promoted because we won't see those scores, like I said, until October. So, and then with that also, school grades will not be this summer, and I've shared that before, but just want to remind the public as well that we will not see school grades until after all these cut scores have been established in October, so much more likely November, maybe even early December before we see the official school and district grades for the 22-23 school year. So that being said, Dr. Livingston can share about how we're using this data now to transition into our summer learning options.
Thank you, Mr. Whitehouse. Good morning. I'm sharing for both elementary and secondary curriculum teams this morning. Having access to the FAST data this year as we move into summer school is going to make a big difference. As you know, we usually don't have this data. So we are excited about what the teachers will be able to do. This will allow the teachers to use this data to plan for the instruction while targeting specific skills. For instance, we've never been able to schedule our algebra boot camp students in the summer based on real students that need the camp. We've just always predicted who may need it. So this year we will actually have in secondary the student, or in high school we'll actually have the students that must have that algebra EOC score for graduation. So that will make a big difference. With this data, they'll be able to plan for the remediation and enrichment through the small group differentiated instruction. This will be especially important for our 3rd grade retained students in order to close in some of those achievement gaps. The 3rd grade summer school teachers will have a unique opportunity this summer to implement a curriculum called Summer Scholars. Teachers will be able to differentiate instruction through these easy-to-follow lessons and activities that are focused on key benchmarks for English language arts. Student resources will also be available in print and digital formats to accommodate diverse learning styles. We're also excited about the option or the opportunity for this data to drive our professional development this summer. We have sessions planned to really focus on ELA and math for our teachers, and so those will take place from the beginning of June all the way through the start of August. So we're looking forward to that because the administrators will be able to send the appropriate teachers to the appropriate sessions. I also would like to share with you, this year I've already highlighted this, but I want to give you an updated number. In secondary, we have impact teachers that are leading great work. We have 54 secondary teachers that have committed to this work and have already begun working with other district teachers within the district, and they are realigning the 23-24 curriculum maps. And it's powerful because they teach the subject, they know the resources, and they are doing the work collaboratively with other teachers of those subjects. So we are, I can't say thrilled enough. So I just want to say how exciting that opportunity is for the teachers to have that ownership and be a part of that work. The impact teachers will also serve as curriculum map enhancement writers, while updating language for even some of our professional development sessions this summer. So we are looking forward to that, and I know they are very proud of themselves and the work that they've already begun, and our administrators are as well. So at this time, we can take any questions that you may have. Dr. Gullett?
Thank you both very much. Board, any questions we have?
I do have just go ahead. So with the FAST testing, I'm just curious how the makeup testing is going to go. I'm just visiting with school campuses, and there's been a lot of student absences. And so how long do we have to get those tests made up?
Yeah, great question. So the test window actually ends at the end of next week. It runs the entire month of May. So in theory, we could still grab students on the last day of school if we need to test. The only test that we can't go into next week is the 5th grade and 8th grade science. Those tests are actually due to be shipped back on Monday. It's a little bit shorter of a window than the ELA and math.
Okay, my next question's in regards to writing. So I know that some schools were piloting this year. Do we have a team that's reviewing the experience that they had with the test pilot for writing and how we can improve it and move forward for next year district-wide?
So the disappointing thing about writing field tests is the state does not release the results. So they're looking at it to make sure that all the different prompts that they use are viable prompts, and basically what they told us is every grade level they field tested about 10 different prompts, so most of our students probably didn't even see the same prompt question that they're writing to use what's viable. So we won't know for sure how they performed, but we do have a general idea of what the writing is going to look like. We know it's now a 12-point rubric instead of a 10-point rubric. And we know how that's going to be scored. We also will start seeing next summer, they're going to go back, the state is going to go back to releasing previous prompts, which if you remember, was coming back in the FCAT days, we used to get these prompts every year, and they used to send us CDs of all of our student writing so we could actually see what the students wrote. And so we're actually going to start getting that next summer after we take the first round of testing. They'll release the writing prompt, and they'll give us back all of our student writing scores and samples of the student writing so we can actually sit down with teachers and go through the student writing. Why did this earn a 6 instead of an 8? And really be able to work with the students and the teachers on how we develop that.
Okay, I'm interested specifically too, and I don't know if the teachers will meet or collaborate at the end of the school year on how going from that writing, the assessment being done in written form to now being typed. And a lot of our schools don't have a typing class, so I wondered which schools were successful, what did they do, and how are we going to move forward with a plan for the whole district to make those accommodations?
Yes, we can certainly gather some of that feedback from the schools that participated. What I can tell you from what the State Assessment Office has shared with us is that when they look at the results, comparing our elementary results for students that obviously had never taken a computer-based writing assessment versus our high school results where they are used to typing and probably have built more typing skills, they said there really is not a huge difference between the range and quality of scores that they're getting back. So, it could just be the prompt, it could be the schools were higher that were selected, we're not sure, but they're not seeing a drastic enough difference that they think typing could have played a negative impact on those schools.
That's great to hear.
But certainly, we need to build the typing skills. That's going to be a must going forward.
Let's see. I think that's it. Thank you, Mr. Whitehouse.
Additional questions, board? Ms. Thurr.
It kind of piggybacks on Board Member Conrad's question regarding accommodations and access. I think about our kids with IEPs and just say, for example, a student with cerebral palsy, smart as a whip, but not having the ability with their hands, and just making sure that the kids are provided for. And I know that type of augmentative technology is very expensive, so is there a plan for that? If we're gonna go all in, all computer, that's a challenge.
Yes, and so the full range of accommodations that have been available before are still available, so we'll certainly meet the needs based on what the IEP teams decide are necessary for testing accommodations. Writing is a paper-based option is still available for students that need it, so that accommodation exists so that not every student necessarily has to access the test through the computer. There's still large print available. There's still basically the full range of options that we had before, but the goal obviously is to get as many students to access it through the computer as we can.
That's comforting to know. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Ms. Conrad.
Dr. Livingood, I have one other question. I'm sorry. So in regards to third grade retention, the numbers I most recently received say 738 students. Do we have a plan, like if I know we can't make them show up to summer school, but after they go through, if they choose to go through that summer camp, what happens at the end? Are they reassessed? Like what is the plan for that?
And I can take that one since
Okay,
we do
thank
all
you.
the assessment for the third grades students in the summer. So yes, we're right now, students that scored a level 1 on FAST have been given the opportunity to take the STAR third grade reading assessment, which is new this year. We've always had iReady, which we still used iReady as a cut score, but because we purchased, well, we didn't purchase, the state purchased STAR K2 for their assessment, we went ahead and added on third grade because we already had access to the system. The schools already knew the system, so it gave us an additional score that we're using for our students. And then we're also doing SAT-10 testing still this spring for those students that don't meet either the iReady or the STAR. And so if they're still in the position where they would be retained after all 3 of those additional attempts and they go through summer school, we will reassess all 3 of those again this summer. So they'll have another shot at iReady after 30 days, STAR, and the SAT-10 this summer at the end of the camp. And the good news with FAST is that because we do a PM1, a progress monitoring window 1 at the very beginning of the school year, if a third grader was to take the FAST PM1 and earn a 2, a retained third grader earned a 2, we could move them immediately to 4th grade. So we can give them those assessments right at the beginning of the year. They score the 2, we go ahead and progress them right on. We don't have to wait for a mid-year promotion for those students.
Okay, all right, thank you very much.
I have one last question too.
Vice Chair Thurber.
Yes, thank you. This is in regards to future testing. I'm not sure the community really understands that in a lot of ways that we have not decreased testing by FAST being implemented. In fact, we've tripled it. So my question is, what are we going to be doing in terms of other testing, knowing that we have tripled the testing load by necessity? How is that going to impact the district tests and so on that we've done in the past when there was just the one big test at the end of the year?
Yeah, so that's definitely conversations we're still having now is how we want to scale those back. We're working with the curriculum team to look at the district progress monitoring assessments that we do to see if we can combine some of those to reduce the number of assessments we're giving, but still help us have that usable data, the formative data that we need to adjust instruction during the months. So that's something we'll hopefully have worked out this summer of making sure we've reduced back the assessment minutes from what we saw this previous year.
That's really great to hear because we've got access to data, incredible amounts of data. And we all know that teachers need time to teach. You can have all the data in the world, but if that's all you're getting and no implementation time or not enough, which is what I continuously hear, it's certainly my intention to want to see, since we're testing 3 times a year already by necessity, what can we do to still capture what we need and move kids forward and reduce that burden?
Right.
Thank you.
My only comment, I don't think anybody else has anything else on this. My only comment is just, it's not to you guys, it's more to DOE to say, whenever my high schooler gets in the car and is so frustrated by the 2 prompts they had that day because they're totally irrelevant to anything in their lives, I hope that they're taking that seriously. And I hope that they are acknowledging that at least try to make sure one is irrelevant and one's relevant. I mean, that's challenging. I mean, when students are having to write on things they could care less about, and I know that we can't always have to do things that we care about, but it's going to continue to make it a struggle for any student to be successful if they're not relevant to their daily lives. So that's all my comment on that.
Something they know about would be helpful.
Something they know about or something that they even have an interest in. Anyway, we'll not go there. Okay, that's all I had on that. So thank you, Mr. Whitehouse and Dr. Livengood. Dr. Gullett, do you have additional items in your briefing?
No additional items for the briefing, thank you.
Okay, terrific. Before we move on to item 3.1, since there was some significant detail in that briefing, is there any public comment on the superintendent's administrative briefing? Seeing and hearing none, we will move on to item 3.1, which is our 2023 legislative updates. Dr. Gullett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Bring forward Lauren Debick, who is going to lead us through this. Thought it was important for the board to be able to hear all the updates. I think this is, record-setting year for legislative changes. And so I think it's important for the board to be able to ask any questions. So, Ms. Debick, thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Campbell, Board Member, Superintendent Dr. Gullett. This morning, I have the pleasure of introducing Jessica Janisiewicz, who is a governmental consultant with Rutledge Asina, and she will lead us in the 2023 legislative session update. Jessica, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me. I'm sorry that I couldn't be there in person, but I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you all. As the superintendent mentioned, this was really quite an astounding year with the amount of legislation that we saw not only proposed but actually passed. So before I begin, I will have just a caveat that this will be just an overview. I will be providing you all with a comprehensive report that details each of the bills that impacts education in one way, shape, or form. We also try to provide guidance for staff that and highlight which bills should be seen by whom in the district. So you make sure that the folks that need to see these changes see them. That'll all be contained within that report. I just wanted to make that caveat that there was so much that this really will just kind of be an overview. But of course, any questions that you may have, certainly today or anytime moving forward, I am available. This year, we saw over 1,800 bills filed, and of those, 356 passed, which is actually a pretty large number when you think about it. The governor has been receiving bills since the legislative session. In fact, some of our bills, like House Bill 1, went to the governor during the legislative session, and he signed it. So he's continuing to receive bills. There still are about 200 that he has not received. So they will continue to send those. Yesterday, he I think got about 20 or so bills. A lot of them were education related, and signed them all right then and there. So we'll continue to see that. He has not been sent the budget yet. I believe that we will see that relatively soon. You may have seen in in the news that we've seen legislative leaders and other members of the State House and Senate have come out and endorsed the governor recently. That is probably a good indicator that we're leading up to budget time. He will have 15 days from when he receives the budget to sign it. I expect there will be a much quicker turnaround than that. The governor, just like us, can see the budget once it's passed by the legislature. So his staff from that moment could start looking at all of the items in the budget and making those recommendations to the governor about potential vetoes, line item vetoes. So it usually doesn't take the full 15 days. So I expect we'll see that relatively soon, and I will certainly make you all aware when that occurs. There were over 40 education-related bills that passed this year. And when you keep in mind that some of these bills have multiple policies contained within them, we're looking at a lot of policy change this year. It really was a tremendous, tremendous year for that. Some things I did want to highlight that occurred that were beneficial for the district. Within the budget, there were changes made to the DCD. It is now called the cost wage factor, and it raised all districts that were under 1 to that 1. Essentially what that means is you generate more funds. Marion County was a big winner in that it was beneficial for your budget to get that jump to the level 1. We were successful in defeating proposed changes to sovereign immunity. We have seen that for the last couple of years. Obviously, there are some major financial implications there if those caps were eliminated or even just raised to a really high level. That will not occur because it did not pass this year. And then there were some exciting changes to teacher certification, extending your temporary teacher certificate from 3 to 5 years. So if you have some of those teachers that would like to stay on, they can do that for an additional 2 years. Also some flexibility if a teacher has received, is showing that they are excelling in the classroom and they're receiving high scores in their evaluations, and they're on that temporary certificate and they're trying to pass the test. If they receive 3 years of a good review, they can waive the general knowledge exam, which for some has been a barrier, particularly from what I understand, the algebra portion of the GK. We also were successful in securing an extension of drop, actually for all employees. So teachers, there was some discussion about teachers. There were some bills floating around that would have done it really just for instructional personnel, but this actually is for all employees now. So if you have folks at the district office that you would like to stay on and they're in drop, they will be able to extend. This does, and we did clarify, this does impact everyone, meaning if you're in drop currently, assuming this bill is signed into law, which we don't have any indication that the governor would veto it. If you're in drop and want to extend, you can, or obviously for those folks who are not in drop yet, when they enter drop, they will have the extended period should they wish to avail themselves of that. And then we were successful in getting some language with regard to graduation rates. There were some real concerns about the changes that were going to occur this year with regard to the elimination of PERT and concordant scores that we've seen the last couple of years since really 2020 when the change was proposed. But obviously with COVID, they made some adjustments there, and we've had that the last couple of years. The PERT didn't go to the level that it had been at, which was I think 96 or 97 was the score. It did jump to 114, which is a much higher, obviously, level. We would have liked to have seen it stay level, but this truly was a real battle this year. So we were happy to get what we could and hopeful that it helped some kids. And then, of course, I will talk about the House Bill 1 and the expansion of the scholarships. What we were really looking at there was ensuring that the funding was correct and that there was a pot of money should projections not be correct that could help ensure that we don't have a proration for school districts. Just because of the way our formula works, we are really the only ones that are prorated. So we were successful on both counts. There is $350 million in the budget. Should their projected numbers for scholarships be lower than what we actually see, and then also language that completely says that we cannot have proration for school districts. That's a huge thing. That doesn't just happen for this year. That language is permanent, unless, of course, the legislature decides to change it in the future, but it's as permanent as it can be, and that will be huge moving forward. So those were all some things that we were excited about. And of course, we were the most excited about the success with getting the Marion County Technical College project in the budget. Major thanks to you all for putting together a great idea and working with our members. Of course, major thanks to Senator Perry and Representative McClain, who were your champions in the legislature. They really worked to spearhead that. And of course, we also thank the big appropriations chairs and the Senate President and House Speaker for allowing it to be included in the budget. I have worked during the legislative session. I shared with the governor's office all of the information about the project so that they were aware when they started looking at the many projects that were included in the budget, that they know that ours is of great value and what it can do for the students of Marion County. So we were very excited, as I think Representative McClain shared when we met. There were so many projects submitted this year. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars worth of projects, and obviously they don't all make it to the finish line. So we were very grateful that ours did, and for our really stellar legislative delegation that was all very supportive of the measure. So we were very excited about that and that success there. Moving on to policy, I will start with the largest and one of the first bills of the legislative session to pass, which was House Bill 1. This, of course, is the expansion of our scholarship programs to essentially all students in the state will qualify. So in the past, we did have income limits and other parameters for these scholarships. Now, really anyone can qualify. And as I mentioned in the beginning, the real focus that we wanted to ensure was that this didn't have any negative impact on public schools, that it's just funded additionally, and that there weren't cuts on our end for these purposes. So we were excited to see that pot of money in there, and also the language about no proration. Additionally, we school districts will not have to report those students. That will now be a Department of Education responsibility. I know that was a bit of a challenge just because a lot of these kids were never in our schools, so trying to find them and identify them and know where they were was a challenge. It wasn't like we had that point of contact for many of them like we would had they been in our schools. So that was something else that we were excited about within that bill. There was also some flexibility language contained within the bill, the teacher certification language that I mentioned previously as well, in addition to flexibility for us, exempting us from the cost per student station requirements for any construction that is started prior to July 1st of 2026. This is really an inflation issue as much as anything. We know costs have gone way up for all sorts of things, but we, because of the requirements of the cost per student station, are limited in how much we can spend. And the challenge there has been, you may have had a project in the works for a number of years that's just getting started this year. Well, what you were quoted 2 years ago is very likely far different than what they're saying now the actual cost will be. So we will be exempt from those requirements until through July 1st of 2026. So anything started before then. And then we will, of course, look at the financial situation and see if we need to go back and advocate for more flexibility at that time. But hopefully that will allow for you all to finish projects that you have had planned for many years and access more of your dollars to do so. The governor did sign this bill, and as I mentioned, it was early in the session, so this is now law. So particularly the teacher certification requirements and the piece about cost per student station, those all are the teacher cert part, and others went into effect right away. So hopefully that would provide some additional help there, because I know many of the certifications and the contracts go through June 30th. So that is now law. That is obviously quite a comprehensive bill, and we will include all of the details about that within our report. Another bill, and actually your district staff was extremely helpful with breaking down and understanding this legislation, was Senate Bill 240. This is a piece of legislation that was championed in particular by the Senate President, who is very excited at looking at ways that we can encourage career and technical courses to expand, and these programs to expand within our schools. There is a lot of exciting content within this bill. Essentially, it contains a lot of incentives to offer these types of programs, providing additional funding and rates. It will also allow our tech centers to offer AS degrees, which is wonderful and something that many have been advocating for many years. And then there is also a $100 million grant program contained within this bill for districts to access to start up new programs within your district. This comes with the acknowledgement that these types of programs can be very expensive to start up because of the need for specialized equipment, specialized facilities, and that these dollars will be available to do just that. So I would certainly encourage, your staff was great at looking at this during the legislative session and providing some really helpful feedback. I would encourage them to take a look now that it has officially been signed by the governor to see what types of opportunities are there for the district that you all could hopefully avail yourselves of and continue to grow those great programs that I know you already offer. Another bill also signed by the governor, House Bill 1259. This is the charter millage sharing bill that we saw go through the legislative session. It does have a phase-in component. So it's just 20% of what you would have to share the first year, then 40, then 60, then 80, and so on. I did work with your CFO. She provided some great feedback about what the cost would be for the district. So this is one, there was a lot of comment about this, particularly on the Senate side on the floor, with some real discussion about coming back this next legislative session to perhaps make some adjustments to this legislation. So I will certainly keep you informed with regard to that. But as of right now, this has been signed by the governor. So that will be something that we have to look at moving forward. Another bill I want to mention, House Bill 1521. This is the facility requirements based on sex bill. This impacts not just school districts, but other institutions as well, state and local public buildings, et cetera. Essentially what you need to know here is that the school board will be charged with developing rule to comply with this law. It's important to note, while there is within the bill, it does create a criminal penalty in certain instances. That is not the case at the school district level. It would be a violation of a rule, whatever your rules and parameters are, and then any of the consequences that you all put into place, of course, would be followed. But essentially, it just says that a person has to use the bathroom that aligns with their gender at birth. And if they do not, and someone asks them to leave, they must leave. And if they do not leave, that is where the rule violation occurs. For our purposes, it also does require that we have both gender bathrooms, but you can also have unisex bathrooms. So that is an option as well, but you have to have male and female restrooms available. So just to know, that'll be something moving forward that you will have to develop rule for. And that, of course, was signed into law by the governor. Another bill that was just signed just yesterday by the governor is House Bill 1069. This is one that your instructional materials and library materials folks will want to look at closely, as it builds on the legislation from last year that looked at your school libraries, and instructional materials, of course. This expands this now to classroom libraries for the purposes of for elementary schools. The contents of those classroom libraries will have to be published just like the school libraries will. Again, that's just for elementary school within this bill. This bill also requires now that the Department of Education create a list of materials for your reproductive health courses. In the past, that had been something that was done at the local level because those were seen as a supplemental curriculum. They weren't part of the core curriculum of math, science, social studies, et cetera, that are adopted at the state level. This will now be adopted at the state level. So much like we see with ELA and math and all the others, there will be a list that the department produces that then the district can choose to use for those courses. It also says there was some additional language that prohibited classroom instruction on sexual orientation or gender identity. Of course, last year that was included in legislation through grade 8. That was through grade 3 last year. This takes it to grade 8 in the legislation. But it is important to note the State Board of Education passed a rule that extends this to grade 12. So the legislation says 8, the state board rule says 12. So it will go further based on that rule, unless, of course, they adjust the rule based on the bill. And then the bill also prohibits school boards from imposing or enforcing requirements that personnel or students be referenced with pronouns that do not correspond with their biological sex, and that is defined in the bill. So you can't have rules saying that someone has to use specific pronouns. Again, that was also signed into law. Oh, I should also mention there's some language regarding committee, your committee review that review your library and other materials, and that should be looked at because there will be additional changes there. So you may have to make some changes to your policies and procedures with regard to that. And again, that'll be another one where I do send detailed information so that you can understand exactly all of the parameters that are contained within that bill as you move forward. and that was signed by the governor just yesterday. House Bill 1537. This is one of those bills that we call a train bill because it ended up with lots and lots of language from myriad of bills that were floating around and wasn't clear if they were going to pass on their own. It started out really with looking at professional development, changing that to professional learning, talking about what professional learning would look like. This is in particular for school administrators. This also included the language that extended the temporary certification language. That language ended up, I think, in about 4 bills that passed. They were just very, very determined to ensure that passed. So that was within this bill as well. It also requires instruction on Asian American and Pacific Islander history. It expands the practical arts credit option that's required for high school graduation to any career and technical education course. So any career and tech course can take the place, or can meet the requirement rather, for the practical arts credit that is within this bill. This bill requires the governor to annually proclaim a 9/11 Heroes Day on September 11th and requires instruction at public schools for that as well. This is also the bill where they did include the language, the high school graduation and the allowing of the PERT for this year, as well as concordance scores. That was contained within this bill as well. There is also language regarding bright futures and what students can do to meet that volunteer requirement. So you may want to have your high school guidance counselors look at that so that they know the changes for the next year. And then there was a slight change to the school grading formula that will go into effect in the future. It simply requires that you add the addition rather of the 3rd grade, the passage rate of the 3rd grade ELA exam as part of your school grading formula. Of course, that is already included as part of the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade passage rates, which, but this then extrapolates 3rd and has it count additionally on its own. So that may have an impact on your school grades moving forward. So there was a lot contained within that bill. This one was also signed by the governor. The graduation changes to the PERT and the concordance scores, those were effective upon becoming law. So we were grateful that the governor signed it as quickly as he did. So if it in fact could help any of the kids that were really struggling to meet those those testing requirements for graduation, that they could go into effect this year and try to do what can be done for those students. So that bill, again, also signed by the governor. Another bill, Senate Bill 256, this is essentially the union bill, does two of the primary components of the bill are raising the participation rate requirement from 50 to 60%. So depending on the union's membership, that may or may not impact their certification, and then also prohibits a direct payroll deduction, and says that cannot occur anymore. This was also signed by the governor, so this may or may not, depending on any of the unions that you may interact and bargain with, depending on their participation levels, this may have an impact on their certification status. They can apply for recertification, so that'll be another thing to watch as we move forward, but that was signed by the governor as well. We saw a good bit of legislation this year targeting and thinking about technology and its impact, just from a safety perspective, from, accessing data, particularly on governmental devices, to then also data about students, and then protection and the thought of the impact of social media on students. So we did see a number of these bills, and a couple of them did pass. The first, Senate Bill 258, this looks at government-issued devices. So this would be any of your school district computers, phones, any of that type of equipment would be impacted by this. The Department of Management Services is charged within this bill of creating a list of apps and other programs that are foreign owned by governments, political parties, corporations, or individuals of foreign country of concern, and then also looks at essentially the safety of those and whether or not there'd be access to important information by these foreign entities. If DMS determines that, in fact, these whatever the apps are that they have on this list, then those cannot be on any governmental devices. So we'd have to ensure that they are not on our computers, phones, etc. We expect that will include TikTok and WeChat, just that was mentioned within the staff analysis at the very beginning, that those would likely be apps that would be impacted by this. Again, this is not anything, of course, on your personal device. This would just be anything that was owned by the government. And the governor did sign this bill. Now, specifically for us, we had House Bill 379, which looks at technology in public schools. And it does a number of things. First, it requires that your school district have an internet safety policy for student access to the internet, and it gives a couple of parameters that you must have included within your policy. That includes that you limit access for students to only age-appropriate content and subject matter. That the policy requires that the safety and security of students while using email. It prohibits any information, access to information and other unlawful online activities by students, and prevents access to websites, apps, or other software that does not protect the disclosure, the use, or the dissemination of their students' personal information. So this could be perhaps some programs that you use, materials, software. It would just need to make sure that they all comply with your internet policy, and that your internet policy complies with the requirements that are found within this bill. This also says that public schools provide instruction for students in grades 6 through 12 on the social, emotional, and physical effects for social media. It allows teachers to designate an area of the classroom for essentially phones during instructional time, so they can say, all the phones go in this basket when you walk in the classroom. When we begin instruction, it allows that to occur as well. This also was signed by the governor. Another bill that we normally wouldn't think that we would be looking at, House Bill 543, that was a bill containing gun legislation, also contained school safety legislation. We've seen pretty much every year as we get recommendations from the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas Commission, the legislature oftentimes takes some of those recommendations and brings them forth and has legislation to conform with their recommendations. So we see some changes regarding the school environment safety incident reporting assessor. And it just requires that they have rules for incidents that are reported to law enforcement. They clarify some of what these various incidents mean. There's some of the confusion, I think, across the state is what one district defines as a battery, let's say, is different than what another district does. So there's some clarification language in here that hopefully will make it easier and more consistent across the state when incidents are in fact reported. There is also creates the Florida Safe Schools K-9 program, and it essentially would allow firearm detection dogs in schools. If this is, of course, a choice, not something that anyone has to do, but there's some language there if you would qualify for that and were interested, you could do so. And that bill was also signed by the governor. Another bill, House Bill 733, this is the middle and high school start time bill. So the provisions of this bill do not go into effect until July 1st, 2026. So there is time here to study how the impact of this in your district, and then of course share with your delegation if there would be any challenges associated with the requirements within this bill. Essentially, it says that middle schools cannot begin their instructional day before 8 o'clock. High schools cannot begin before 8:30. It also requires that we inform the community, parents, students, teachers, administrators, everyone about the health and safety impacts of sleep deprivation on middle and high school students. It also, you have to create some local groups to look at the implementation of this law. So it is certainly a recommendation that you do that relatively quickly, get those groups together with stakeholders, parents, community members, et cetera. There can be some unforeseen consequences associated with this. There have been some districts that have, excuse me, that have done this in the past and have found some challenges regarding transportation and other issues. So it's important to get all the folks together and determine how this may impact your district. And then, of course, as I said, share it with your delegation. But this was signed by the governor as well, but again, does not go into effect, at least the official start times, until 2026. We also have House Bill 7039. This looks at literacy and math instruction. One of the primary things within this bill is looking at banning of the 3 queuing system in literacy as your primary way of instructing your early learners with their literacy skills. If you were using a product that used that 3 queuing method primarily, you have to get a new material. I do not believe that applies to you all. There was a list that we shared early in session. I don't think you were a part of that, so hopefully it will not impact you all. But for districts that did make those purchases of those materials, there is $150 million contained within the bill for the purchase of new materials. It'll be incumbent on the department to determine what appropriate materials will make the list. They could simply just go back to their ELA adoption list from a couple of years ago, strike the publisher that doesn't meet the standard and retain the others, and just say districts can choose from that, or they may choose a different method. We don't really know how they're going to approach it yet, so we'll stay tuned for that one. And then for math instruction, it looks at dyscalculia and essentially puts in the same types of provisions that we have for dyslexia, the identification, communication with parents, strategies and plans that need to be in place for students that have dyslexia will now apply to students that have dyscalculia. So we will continue to follow that as well. And now, of course, we'll need your instructional folks will need to take a hard look at that legislation. That was also signed by the governor as well. We also had a pretty significant bill looking at teachers' rights. That's House Bill 1035. That bill puts into law some provisions with regard to teachers and protecting their ability to have the authority in the classroom. This bill, so you really want to look at that when it comes to your policies and procedures. This was signed by the governor as well earlier this month. So this was a bill that was a priority, something that he mentioned before legislative session. So no great surprise that he signed that bill as well. That is, of course, now going to be law as well. And then we do also have some other bills I want to mention. We had a couple of retirement bills. This is a little bit of a smaller retirement bill, but House Bill 1121 fixes the volunteer issue that we've been having, where there was guidance from DMS for folks when they first retire saying you really can't go and volunteer during your first year of retirement at a school, or I think we also had some folks that were interested in working polling locations, particularly folks who worked at the Division of Elections and were experts in that area. They were advised not to do so because it would in some way hurt their retirement, even though they were volunteering rather than working. So we were able to get clarification within this bill. It defines what a volunteer is and essentially says your retirement will not be at risk so long as you are, volunteering in the way as described within the bill. So hopefully that will help with some of our teachers, former teachers and others that were interested in coming back and, reading in classrooms or volunteering, that they will still have the opportunity to do that moving forward and not worry about jeopardizing their retirement. We did have 2 school board related bills. The first, House Bill 477, which is the term limits for your school board members. This provision is in place first let me say, it takes us from the 12-year term limit to 8, and then it is for service on or after November 8th of 2022. So if you were someone that was elected this past November, your 8-year time clock started ticking then. If you were not, if you were elected in 2020 or appointed at another time, your time clock has not started yet. It is only from November 8th, 2022 moving forward. So the 8 years would start at your next election, if that makes any sense. So that was also signed by the governor. So that is law as well. And then we also had House Bill 31. This is something that requires a change to the Constitution. So it was passed by the legislature, but it will also go on the ballot and has to be approved by the people of Florida in order to go into effect. And this would say that school board races would be partisan races if it were to be approved by the majority of the state. So that's not one that the governor deals with because it goes on the ballot, but it was passed by the legislature. We did have a couple of things I wanted to mention, which are optional, but could be opportunities depending on issues that you may or may not be having in the community. Senate Bill 766 essentially allows for the school bus stop arm cameras. You can either, as a district, have them installed yourself, or you can go through a vendor if you wish to do so. And then there are parameters in the bill that would allow for the sharing of the ticket payment with the district proceeds going to the district and local communities. Again, completely optional, not something that you have to do, but something that you can do should you be interested in it. From what I understand, it would act much like a red light camera situation where a photo is taken and a ticket is generated and sent to that individual if they are caught passing a school bus with the stop arm down. That has not been signed by the governor yet. That was sent to him though, and he has until the very last day, the 31st of May of this month, to sign that bill into law. Another bill, this looks at the enforcement of school zone speed limits. This is also a camera type bill that would go either on some signage in school zones where if someone drives by and they are going faster than the speed limit, again, you'd have a ticket generated there sent to the individual for their payment. This, however, has to be a local, your counties and municipalities would be the ones who have to decide to do this, but they certainly could do it. And then there is also a sharing of the funds that are generated within this as well. So if you've been having issues either with your school buses or with speeding in your school zones, these are some opportunities perhaps to look at trying to make as safe of an environment as we can for the kids. This was also sent to the governor on the same day as the previous bill, so he has until the very end of this month to sign the bill or just allow it to become law on its own. And then lastly, when it comes to policy, we have HB 225. That is the interscholastic bill. That is essentially the bill that looks at the FHSAA. I mentioned it because I know they are close to being in your backyard, the actual association. And then also, of course, you have athletic directors and coaches who may be impacted by this. The major changes within this bill is taking the composition of the board from 16 to 13 members, and then changing who determines who is on this board. Instead of it being folks that are voted on by the assembly with of course, some additional appointees by the governor and others, it will now be 8 folks that are appointed by the governor and confirmed by the Senate, and then 1 additional person who is appointed by the Commissioner of Education, and then 4 members from public and private schools that are voted on by the Representative Assembly of the FHSAA. So for any of your staff and folks that are involved with the association, there will be some changes there. That bill was signed by the governor just yesterday, so that will be law come July 1st. Moving forward, looking at the budget, I'll speak just briefly about a couple of bills. House Bill 5101 is our conforming bill. That bill does just what it sounds like. It conforms some of the dollars that are in the budget for a specific purpose. This is essentially the language that goes along with that makes those dollars and tells us essentially what to do with those funds. The biggest thing within 5101 is that the changes to the FEFP. So we saw a number of categoricals that were folded into the base, which made the base look like it was higher, because of course we know there are still requirements associated with these. So one example is the teacher salary allocation. We did get additional dollars within that allocation this year, but most of that money, you all have already determined what you're going to do with it because it was determined last year, and obviously we continue to pay those salaries. So even though it's in the base, there's not really flexibility with that teacher salary allocation in there. Instructional materials was also folded into the base, as were a number of other categoricals. In the budget spreadsheet that we sent to you all a couple weeks ago, we attempted to show the breakdown of those categoricals that were folded into the base so that you all could get a real clear understanding of where your actual increases in dollars were once you extrapolate out your salary allocation, your instructional materials, et cetera, et cetera. And then we also tried to, at least based on the estimates and the numbers that were included when they developed the budget, the same for your voucher students. So those dollars are still within the FEFP, but of course they will go and follow that student to their private school, so they will not remain at the district. So we wanted to be able to extrapolate those numbers as well so that you had a clear understanding of what you're looking at moving forward for next year. That was probably the primary thing that we saw within this bill, but we also did see, this is where the changes to the DCD were made, changing that to the cost wage factor and moving everyone under one up to one. It also eliminated the ceiling for the Group 2 programs, which will hopefully generate more funds. That was something that we've been wanting to see for many years. So there was quite a bit within this bill, but that was the largest piece, where it was the changes to the FEFP. You will want your instructional folks to take a look at this bill, as well as there are some changes to the reading programs and what we can do with those dollars. And then also changes made to the mental health assistance program. From what I can tell and from folks I've talked to thus far, it looks like those are actually some pretty positive changes, but nevertheless, you'll want your folks to take a look at all of those. I do know that the Instructional Materials Association is looking at having their cost analysis that they've done every year for many, many years, which they provide to the legislature as their best estimate of what a full purchase of instructional materials would cost statewide. Used to be many years ago, before the Great Recession, the legislature really just took that number because it is an average from various publishers, so it gives a pretty good idea of what is needed to fund those materials. During the onset of the Great Recession and when cuts were being made, they haven't quite made that number since that time. But we know, just like everything else, things are costing more money, and you obviously can't educate kids without materials. So they're going to, I believe, shift a little bit of their focus and do district-specific cost analysis that they can share so that you will know, even though that is, again, in the base, it'll give you an idea for preparation purposes of how to prepare and know that what you will likely need to spend if you're choosing to make a full purchase of instructional materials. So I think you can expect that in the coming years. Another bill that I know generated a lot of excitement is House Bill 7024. That is the big retirement bill. That is where all of the changes to drop were made. So It allows an entry into drop at any time, so we don't have those requirements for years of service or age that have, really prior to this forced folks to make a choice as to whether or not they were going to enter drop. Now you can enter at any time. It extends drop from 60 to 96 calendar months for all employees. That is, except classroom teachers who actually get more. They get up to 10 years should they want to do that. It also changes the interest rate that when you're in drop from 1.3% to 4%. So when you enter drop, your money will actually be making more money. And it also increases the monthly retiree health insurance subsidy, which has been at $5, and it moves that to $7.50 for each year of service. It is capped at $225 per month, and the minimum benefit is raised to $45 a month. So that should help retirees. Those provisions, the drop provisions, those and the others are effective upon becoming law. So once the governor, if and when the governor signs the bill, those will become law immediately. The other portions of the bill, which are the rates, which the legislature sets every year, that is, of course, effective July 1st, because that will impact us there moving forward. As I said, that bill has not been sent to the governor yet. We don't have any indication that he would be in opposition to this, but we will, of course, keep an eye on it. And then lastly, we always follow the tax bill because there are usually provisions in there that can impact education. The largest being back to school tax holidays, just for your families to know. There will be 2 this year, July 24th through August 6th, so before school, and then also an additional back to school tax holiday, January 1st through the 14th. This has not been sent to the governor yet, but we expect it will be soon. There's obviously far, far more contained within there than what I just mentioned, but that is the primary for education. And then looking ahead, this is one of those years where we go from what is a regular session term, March to May, into an early session where we will have committee meetings starting actually in September of this year. The House is coming back in September. The Senate is not, they're not coming that week that the House is, but they are coming in October. Then we have 2 weeks, essentially every month, up until the month of January, when session will begin this year. Session is slated to begin on January 9th and go through March 8th. If the legislature this year is as efficient as they were this legislative session, we may actually be able to see them finishing on time. They actually finished this year, I believe, before noon on Friday, which was unheard of. It just really hasn't happened in many years. So we are really jumping right back into it. For that reason, we do tend to see on these years, we see that there is a lot of overlap from policies that occur that maybe didn't pass this year, though it's hard to imagine what wouldn't pass, what we had so much pass. But that is something that we tend to see moving forward. So that is all I've got for you.
That's all, Jessica? Come on. Surely there's
Do you
more.
have any questions?
Thank you so much, Jessica Janasiewicz. What an amazing update. I know I was feverishly taking notes as our fellow board members, marking which ones had already been signed into law and which ones had not yet, and where we were in process. So I want to open it up to my fellow board members if there are any specific questions of Jessica in what you heard so far. Anybody have a specific question? There's a lot here. Yes, go ahead, Vice Chair.
Hi, Jessica. It's Nancy Thrower. How are you? Can you hear me?
Can you hear us, Jessica?
I'm so sorry. It just went out. I couldn't hear you. I apologize.
No worries at all. It's Nancy. How are you?
I'm great. How are you doing?
Good, good. Thank you so much for this comprehensive overview that was actually understandable.
Well, thank you.
Okay, I have a few questions. I'll start with, do you anticipate our governor not signing any education-related bills that would really have a lot of impact on us? It doesn't sound like that, but I just wanted to get your feel.
Yeah, it really looks this year like the governor, I can't see him not signing any of those remaining bills.
Okay.
He was really supportive of quite a lot of them, as you may have heard, you may mention, and we really don't have very many left that for him to sign. So I don't anticipate any vetoes in our area of the woods. Now, what we may see within the budget is some vetoing, particularly as he's gearing up more than likely for a presidential run. He might make some statements there, but for our policies, I think they will likely all become law ultimately.
Okay, thank you for that. And just for my reminder and also for the community, because this truly is historic and exciting, our Marion Technical College appropriation, and you did a great job thanking everyone that helped get this across the finish line. What was the actual amount again of that appropriation?
$5.5 million. It was $5,570,000, which based on the great work of your staff, I think would fully fund that project and get it completely done.
That is absolutely fantastic for Marion County, especially for our kids. So that's just wonderful. Glad to hear that number. Let's see. I took a lot of notes. And some of them you answered as I continued to write. And this may be more for the board and for Dr. Gullett in regards to the school bus legislation, and that the governor has until May 31st to sign both of those with the passing infractions, and also, which would be the cameras, and then the enforcement of the school zone speed limits. You know, as a school board member and as a school board, along with Dr. Gullett, I'd like to take some proactive action on that, and make sure that we make it clear that this is something that we really support and we really need. Those are the kinds of safety issues that we're dealing with our buses every single day. It makes it more challenging to retain good bus drivers. You know, we want them to be as safe as possible on the road while they're transporting our students. So I will say that. And I think that was really it as far as questions for you, Jessica. Again, thank you so much. And I really look forward to getting up there during committee time again. That it's proved to me that was a very productive way to proceed. I'm grateful for the relationships and the respect that we've built with our legislative delegation. And it's really exciting to know that we've been heard and supported. There's always going to be more that we feel we need on behalf of students, but I would say that there were a lot of good wins here for us, and we were heard. So I really appreciate your great work in partnering with us on that, Jess.
Well, thank you, and it would be wonderful to have you all come up. I will be sure to send you. We actually do have those specific committee meeting dates, so I can get that to you all, and you can start thinking about that right now, about when might be a good time, just based on the school calendar and everything, to come on up. It certainly is great to come during that committee week time when things are still relatively, just kind of getting started, to really lay the groundwork. It was you all made a huge difference in coming, and I really appreciate it, because I think you all came from a meeting that the night before, and it was I know not an easy thing to do, but I greatly appreciate it. And also, I neglected to mention something that I believe we talked about when you all were up during the committee weeks, was that the Senate President is very committed during this interim period between now and when we come back for committee weeks to really look at the deregulation of public schools. That was something, at least that was shared with us from the Senate President's office. So we will work on that, and we'll be in touch with you all, as I'm sure will the Superintendent's Association and the School Boards Association and others, to provide recommendations for those types of deregulations that we think would be beneficial, that would really just take some of the things that aren't focused on student health, safety, and instruction, but are just, some things that we could do to try to make everyone's lives a little bit easier and make our focus be really on educating kids and not sending reports, for example, things like that. So we'll be in touch about that as well.
Great.
Thank you, Jessica. Were you finished?
Yes.
Okay. And I'll go to another board member in just a moment, but thank you for bringing, this is Allison. Jessica, thank you so much for saying that, because I was going to actually mention that whenever we were wrapping this section up, because the Florida School Board Association Advocacy and Legislative Committees just talked about that also, that potentially some of the legislative priorities that the FSBA will be recommending are in the deregulation areas. And so I'm making notes of things I wanted to talk about as we wrap up this section of our work session, but that was one of them. So as we are forward thinking to what our legislative priorities are, I know I told Dr. Gullett that this week, that, for the team to start thinking about what deregulation would look like in certain areas, and how that might be helpful for students and helping students succeed, and making sure that our employees have the tools they need, but also aren't doing things that really just are time consuming and unnecessary. So thank you for that. Let me go to another board member. Is there additional questions of Jessica?
I just have a comment, Jessica. It's Lori Conrad. I just want to say, as a board member, I'm thankful that so many of these bills are grassroots, and they're going to have a positive effect all the way down to the classroom level. I'm happy to see that our retired teachers and our volunteers are going to be able to get back to work if they so choose. Volunteering, that we're giving some authority to teachers in the classroom so they can teach and not manage cell phone use. So I'm just really grateful that this round, we're seeing some things that are going to positively affect the instruction in our classrooms. So thank you for the work that you're doing and your team.
Thank you. Anything else?
Thank you all so much. It really is such a pleasure to get to work with you all and the district. You just have done an exceptional job. It's been a really successful year, and you all have been focused on such great things. And I think we were able to have some really good achievements. And I just appreciate the opportunity to work with you.
Absolutely, Jessica. Thank you so much for your partnership, for your advocacy, I know at least those of us who've been to Tallahassee a few times before, when we brought our new board members up with us for the first time, we're like, wow, we had such impactful days. You don't understand how great this has been, and in part because Jessica coordinated all of that and walked us as fast as we could to appointment. And the two times that we went up, both incredibly productive days. Kudos again. Thank you so much to our legislative delegation and all the work that they put in. They were all on board with this MTC expansion. So we're ready to see the governor sign that into law, and hopefully we'll get ready to move on that as soon as possible. From the team perspective, what I'm hearing now more than anything is we have about 4 months before we need to get back up there again. So we do need to get serious about what we want our legislative priorities to be. That means some work over the summer. I believe this was the first time ever, but at least the first time in very recent history, that Marion County Public Schools did request an appropriation request specifically for a new project that is going to be impactful to student achievement, student success in our community, that's going to help our workforce. I'm interested in another project. Team, what is that? What would that look like? I'm sure we all would get behind whatever the recommendation is. But again, 4 months is a really short period of time whenever you think about how long it might take us to put something together. So as I told someone yesterday who is very impactful in Tallahassee, doesn't hurt to ask. All we have to do is put out a request and we'll see where it goes. And so whatever that looks like, I'm excited to work with you again, Jessica. I know that the full board, we appreciate your advocacy and appreciate your partnership with us all along the way. And thank you for spending all of this time with us this morning. I know that you were on the phone with us, but as Vice Chair Thrower said, in a way that we could understand it. All of this legislation flying around Tallahassee, and yet you were able to explain it to us in a way that we know what we need to look for. We're taking notes, we're marking down things we need to go back and actually read the law and see how it's gonna help us. And then we know we have policy updates that are gonna be coming from Mr. Powers very soon so that we can get all of this, once it becomes law, all of this implemented in our policies too. So thank you again, Jessica. Really, really grateful for all the work that you've done with us.
Thank you all, and I know that was so much to digest, so please know that, if there are ever any questions that come up anytime, just feel free to reach out, and I will get that comprehensive report out as well, so hopefully that'll provide a level of detail, as you said, to when you go to implement all of this pretty extensive legislation. Hopefully that will be helpful, but thank you so much for the opportunity today and the opportunity to work with you.
Perfect, thank you. And we'll also be looking for information from you on the committee meeting dates. I think if we already have those, we could go ahead and start coordinating calendars as to when we might want to. 4 months isn't that long away when we think of some of the other things we already have on our calendar. So if we can get some of those times in Tallahassee scheduled, that would be helpful for all of us.
Absolutely, absolutely. And what I'll do within that is just try to provide also, we do have some kind of odd weeks for just the House and Senate, and obviously you probably want to avoid that so you can get as much bang for your buck. So I'll note that as well. Just when you make your determinations, you can keep that in mind.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Jessica. We appreciate you. And if there's nothing else from the board or from Dr. Gullett on that, I'll go ahead and open it up for public comment. Is there any public comment on the 2023 legislative updates? Seeing and hearing none. Thank you again, Jessica. We so appreciate you and looking forward to getting some emails from you soon.
Wonderful. Thank you. I'll do it. Thank you all. Have a wonderful rest of the day.
You as well. Okay, moving on to item 4.1, Dr. Gullett. Board, would it be okay if we took about a 5-minute break right here? Would that be okay? All right, it's 10:22. We're going to take a quick recess, maybe 7 minutes. We'll come back at 10:30. Thank you. Coming back in out of recess at 10:31. Oh, I was hoping it would be 10:30, but it's 10:31. We are moving on to item 4.1, which is the impact of growth in Marion County update. Dr. Gullett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Barbara Dobbins is going to kick off this component and provide a timeline of information that you will be receiving. Students, so will the public. A lot of information to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Dr. Campbell, board members, and Superintendent Dr. Gullett. Today's presentation will provide an update to the impact of growth in Marion County. First, Lauren Debick, our Executive Director of Communication and Community Engagement, will provide a recap of the work done thus far, and then we will present next steps.
Good morning again. What I will be going through is a recap of the work that has been done for the past year. Almost exactly to the date, 1 year ago, my colleagues and myself stood in front of the school board for a work session to talk about the impact of growth in Marion County. So that presentation took place almost about 1 year ago. Since then, here are some other highlights that have taken place. The board approved the consultant contract and scope of work for the impact fee and long-range plan study. That was in August. Again, that was with Benesh. In October of 2022, the Marion County Public Schools Growth and Development Task Force Committee was developed, and this committee started meeting on a monthly basis. In December, we had the joint public workshop presentation that was with the county, with the city, and local municipalities, where we went over the impact of growth in Marion County and what our next steps were. In December, we had a school board work session on the Southwest Localized Rezoning Plan. So if you remember back to the December joint public workshop, we talked about a phased approach and how we were going to address the impact of growth. The rezoning was phase 1, and what you are going to see in the next steps are those additional phases. In February, the school board work session reviewed stakeholder input on the Southwest Rezoning Plan. On February 28th, the school board adopted the Southwest Localized Rezoning Plan. During the same board meeting, they adopted the updated interlocal agreement. So throughout the past year, the interlocal agreement committee was also meeting. So that plan was adopted at the end of February. And today we are having a work session on an impact of growth update. So we will go into next steps. What we will see in the coming weeks, next week, the work session agenda for 5:30, May 30th, will be published. What we will see on May 30th, that work session, the consultant, Benesh, will be here in person to go over the results from the long-range plan and impact fee study. Some of the topics that will be covered during that presentation include population growth, schools needed, cost estimates for the schools, funding options, and then again, that impact fee study.
After individuals have time to digest the consultant's long-range plan and impact fee study on the 30th, we will follow up the next day at the May 31st work session with our district recommendations based on their findings. The agenda for the May 31st work session will be published on May 24th. In the work session, we will cover the future school site properties that we own, and based on the data provided by the consultant, we will be providing recommendations on future school construction projects. We will also provide future district facility construction recommendations and provide a tentative timeline for implementation. Lastly, we will provide recommendations for funding sources and asset utilization. Again, the recommendations will be provided based on the data presented by the consultant on May 30th and their findings in the long-range plan and impact fee study that they conducted. Thank you.
Dr. Gullett.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Dobbins and Ms. Debick. Board, we're happy to answer any questions you have about our timeline and next steps.
Questions of the board? Vice Chair.
Just make a quick comment. Thank you for your work, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Additional comments or questions, board members?
I'm just want to say I'm thankful too. This is a list that shows a lot of work that's been put on, and some of it was difficult. So I just appreciate you all. I appreciate also the time that you take to go through each step of it with us, so we have a better understanding of the process. So thank you to both of you.
Thank you. No other comments from the board. The only other comment that I would say is, again, thank you for the work. Sometimes it's helpful to see it again in this snapshot view of where the timeline actually has been in process for us on this. I know this is something that we're wanting to hurry up faster than we can, and unfortunately right now, potentially this could have been the day that we had Banesh come and talk to us about this, but we're kind of at their mercy in some ways. We have received the study back, but now actually having them here in person to present the results is what's causing the delay. So that's unfortunate. We are at their mercy right now from a scheduling standpoint. But beyond that, I believe all the board has been or will be briefed on the results already. So once that all goes live, it's going to be information that we have already seen. And so once it goes live, I'm sure there will be questions that we'll be able to generate lots of questions for whenever they are here in person, interested in seeing how the May 30th and May 31st go separately, independently, yet collectively. So this is a much needed conversation, and I think we're all ready for it. So, Dr. Gullett.
Madam Chair, if I may add, thank you. We had this conversation before with the rezoning component. This is the rapid growth that we're experiencing and our responsibility to move forward and address all of these items is complicated, but we are committed to doing what's best for our students. And we appreciate the partnership that we've had with our other community leaders outside of this district, outside the board, and look forward to that cooperation moving forward so that we can help support our students have a safe and productive learning environment. And that is first and foremost where we are. So I appreciate the board's support and appreciate our community leaders' support in having high quality education. Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Reverend Cummings.
I did want to say something. Thank you to all of you for the presentation, the briefing, and all those things. That Ms. Devick, I did want to ask a question just for clarity, because I want people to understand how we got here. The MCPS Growth and Development Task Force Committee. Can you talk about that committee and who made up that committee, that task force?
Absolutely. That was a committee that was developed by the district, so it is led by community members. We have some parents on the committee, district staff are also on the committee, and it was pulled together to get input from the community, from the district about the growth that we are seeing, something that was led within the district. What we have been doing with the committee is talking through what the plans are as far as the rezoning and then waiting for the results from the consultants so we can all be on the same page moving forward.
And I think Board Member Thrower, you were on that committee, correct?
I was on the committee for the interlocal agreement for updating that.
No, so if I may, Madam Chair, as a reminder to the board, this was my committee. This is absent of any elected officials. So this was created out of my request to have business community leaders at the table with some areas of expertise in looking at growth and development in Marion County, and gave them the space and time to work together and problem solve and make recommendations to me that I can make recommendations to the board, absent of any elected officials.
Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. No additional questions or comments from the board. I'll open it for public comment. Seeing and hearing none, I believe that wraps up our agenda items for today. We will head on into, actually before we head into board member comments, I do want to go ahead and recognize School Board Attorney Jeremy Powers for something he has for us.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Board members, I'm notifying you that Attorney Suzanne Green, or her designee of the Bicycle Law Firm, has informed me that advice is needed regarding case number 2022 CA 478. That's styled P. Burnett versus the School Board of Marion County, Florida. Pursuant to 286.011 Florida statutes, the Government and Sunshine Act, on behalf of Attorney Green, I'm requesting an attorney-client session with the board for the purpose of discussing the evaluation and/or compromise of said claim. I've asked the board's clerk to cause reasonable public notice of the time and date of this attorney-client session and the names of the persons attending to be published. It's suggested that the attorney-client session be held at 9:00 a.m. during a recess of the June 1st, 2023 administrative briefing and work session, scheduled or as soon thereafter as may be heard. As required by this statute, only the following individuals will be present: Allison Campbell, Board Chair; Nancy Thrower, Vice Chair; Eric Cummings, School Board Member; Lori Conrad, School Board Member; Dr. Sarah James, School Board Member; Superintendent Diane Gullett; myself, Suzanne Green, Esquire, or the designee of the Vice Cole Law Firm. I've asked a court reporter to record the session, also as required by statute. Her notes will be fully transcribed and filed with the clerk of the school board. Upon the conclusion of any litigation and or settlement of all claims arising out of this incident, the transcript will be made a public record.
Thank you, Attorney Powers. I recommend the board hold an attorney-client session pursuant to Section 286.011 Florida statutes to discuss a pending claim. If there are no objections to the attorney-client session, it should occur during a recess of the June 1st, 2023 administrative briefing and work session starting at 9:00 a.m. or as soon thereafter as the matter may be heard. So essentially, we will gavel in and then go into an attorney-client session, is the way I'm understanding that. Is that?
Right.
Okay. So is there any concern, board, about that June 1st, 2023 work session with us going into attorney-client session immediately at 9 a.m.? Yes, Dr. James.
I don't have a okay. Oh. Hello. Okay. I don't have a problem doing the session. I'm going to draw concern with the length of things that are for that day. It is our only work session, and I think if we're going to add this to it, I would most certainly make the suggestion that we schedule a second work session for June. I think we only have one work session in June, and while this may take 10 minutes, it could take 90 minutes, and we have a lot of things to address in June and only one work session. So I would just offer the potential to add a work session in the middle of June to cover business so that we're not here for, I can't even imagine when we would be done.
Vice Chair.
I agree, let's schedule it, and if there's a chance that then we don't need it, we get done quickly in the morning, so be it. But I agree we should plan for that.
Agreed. So I know recently we have been addressing calendar updates and things via email. So if we could coordinate that through the superintendent's and board clerk's offices for us to go ahead and schedule an additional work session in the month of June. I know that there may be calendar issues with that based on not knowing we were going to have one. And so we just need to ensure that we're all coordinated as such. And just looking ahead, we will be together on May 30th, May 31st, June 1st, and June 2nd, all together. And that's going to be a long week, and then we're heading into a conference the following week. So but I completely concur, Dr. James. I think that adding a work session in June, potentially on the 15th, but I'm just throwing that date out right now because we need to calendar that and figure out how that works with everybody's schedules. So if we can handle that scheduling offline, I think that would be helpful for us to do, but just throwing out the date June 15th right now, and if that potentially works with everyone, we can work on that. But thank you for that. So with no objections on the June 1st beginning at 9 a.m. with the attorney-client session, and then we will begin the agenda of the regular administrative briefing and work session immediately following the attorney-client session on June 1st. Okay, thank you so much. Speaking of the board clerk, anything out of your office?
No, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Attorney Powers, anything else?
Apart from this, no.
Okay, perfect. Dr. Gullett.
Just briefly, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. We kick off graduations tomorrow. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask, but looking forward to celebrating our students. Thank you.
Terrific. Dr. James.
I wanted to begin my comments by apologizing for my absence last Tuesday evening for our most recent board meeting. As some may know, I own a private preschool and we had our VPK graduation that evening. Next year we'll do a better job of planning, but I did feel it was necessary for me to be present at that graduation. There were remarks made during board comments in that meeting last week that I fundamentally am in disagreement with. These remarks came from a fellow school board member. I want to assure you if I had been present last Tuesday, I would have addressed these comments that night. However, I was absent. But I did watch them live, and I was honestly in disbelief. This board member began their comments by referencing this board as my board. The problem here is simple. We're not this school member's board. We are your board, the community of Marion County, the voters, you, the people. Then they proceeded to make a variety of remarks about our educators during Teacher Appreciation Week nonetheless. If the remarks had been positive, I wouldn't be making these comments today. Instead, they spoke about the 1% that are no good, the 1% that ruin a person's educational experience. They then said they would not be a part of perpetuating a culture of embedded dysfunction, where we choose individuals who potentially are harming students' educations just to have a body in front of kids. I can assure you, as a past school leader myself, our principals and school leaders are not choosing individuals who may potentially harm students just to have a body in front of kids. To make this insinuation is reckless and utterly disrespectful to the authority our leaders have on their campuses and the good and tireless work they are doing each and every day to not only recruit but also retain qualified staff. Is there work to do? Absolutely, and they're doing it daily. They then stated that over 95% of our educators have an effective or highly effective teacher evaluation, and insinuated these evaluations may be inflated by our administrators. What they shared was in fact not true. For the 2021-2022 school year, 90% of our educators were effective or highly effective, not 95%. As a board, we make a commitment to transparency in our commitment statement. I believe it is the responsibility of each member of the board to present factual information to the public always. As they concluded their monologue on this topic, they stated they would, and I quote, go line by line and name by name for approval of reappointment of every employee in this district. This fundamentally undermines the authority of our employee, Dr. Diane Gullett, whose job it is ultimately to ensure we are hiring quality educators. I am formally requesting our superintendent add an agenda item to our next available board meeting on June 13th, where the topic of discussion will be board decorum, with a conversation regarding a vote of no confidence and/or censure of a fellow board member. I will no longer afford the privilege of privately addressing the lack of decorum and blatant display of public disrespect of the employees of Marion County Public Schools. I believe a public discussion on this matter is more than appropriate and look forward to seeing our superintendent add this item to the agenda of the June 13th board meeting. That concludes my comments.
Thank you, Dr. James. Reverend Cummings.
Good evening, good morning, good afternoon. What is it, still morning? Whatever it is.
10:45, yeah, we're good.
Listen,
Morning.
I'm excited about where we are right now as far as with graduations. Last night I had the privilege to be one of the speakers at the Westport High School Baccalaureate program, and tomorrow morning I look forward to being out at Hillcrest. We do have a lot to discuss. We do have some things that we need to work on as a board, and I look forward to our upcoming meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Cummings. Ms. Conrad.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I had the privilege, and Chair Campbell was there also, of participating in the Fort King Heritage Foundation dedication of the blacksmith shop. It was a super event, and I enjoyed spending time with our commissioners and learning the history that was Fort King, that I think will be a positive impact for our students here in Marion County as they have the opportunity to go and visit and tour that historical site. Another event I had the privilege of visiting was the Hillcrest Art Show. If you have not had the opportunity to go, I would like to encourage and invite you to attend next year. It really was inspiring. The work that the art teacher is able to do with the staff and the children there is amazing. And so I just encourage you to go by and see the work that they're doing each and every day. It's a culmination of a year's worth of work. And their art teacher, their music teacher, everybody participates in helping them prepare these special projects. So just if you need to fill your cup up, I encourage you to stop by and enjoy the work. One other little piece of that, because this new area is new to me, I know Nancy is kind of our resident expert. But the students were communicating with me through their iPad and give me directions. And it really was just amazing as we talk about moving forward with all of these pieces in technology. Sometimes I forget the realm, the reach that we have and the students that we're able to accommodate. So I'm just really, really grateful for the opportunity that all of our students have to succeed. So thank you to everyone who is part of that piece of success. I got to attend the Bellevue High School Baccalaureate, similar to Reverend Cummings, and it was just a special time. I haven't been to a baccalaureate, I won't say 30 years or so, but it was great to be able to be with students and their families. Some were singing, some recited scripture, and it was an intimate time to celebrate with them as they move forward in their journey, making decisions about the next part of their life. So I'm thankful to be able to be a part of that. At our meeting last week, I did go home and I lost some sleep. When I was newly elected, a former board member, the first piece of advice that she gave to me is just be able to go home at night and know that you made the best decisions that you could. And I try to live by that. Are they all right? No. But I do try to do my best and be informed. But last week I went home and I lost sleep because I'm extremely grateful for the work that our staff does. Are we all perfect? No, we're not. I was a teacher in that seat. Did I do everything perfect last year in 4th grade? I'm sure that I did not. I'm only human. But I regret that I didn't take the opportunity last week to say how grateful I am for our teachers and our staff. And I found it unfortunate that we had to have that conversation on Teacher Appreciation Day. So I'm just coming back today to tell you, our staff members, many who are working right now and they cannot be a part of this, but this board member appreciates you greatly, and I know that the challenges are large. Most of us are doing the best we can, so just know that I am in support of the work that you're doing each and every day, and if there's something I can do to help you as we look at this process of education as a growth process. How do each of us become better? How do I become better as a board member? That I'm here to support you in your journey, so please reach out to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Conrad. Vice Chair Thrower.
Thank you. Yes, it is May, and my cup truly runneth over. This is the time of year where it's the culmination of all of the intensive work and the effort and the blood and the sweat and the tears all come together and in celebration. And I know the rest of the board members' calendars have been just as full as mine with so many different events and acknowledgments, seen, loved, heard, appreciated, grateful, right down to our kids at Hillcrest. Just because you can't talk doesn't mean you don't have something to say. And I continue to be committed as a board member to authentically inspiring and acknowledging all of our challenges, all of our successes, because that's what it takes to be great. And so I would encourage everyone that works with us to remember, this is what we're here for, and we have to be here for each other. And we must be mindful of our actions, our words, and our deeds, especially as leaders. And in many ways, I will say that anyone that works with students is a leader, because kids notice everything, right? And so I continue to be inspired and honored to have the responsibility that I've been elected to do, and I truly hope moving forward that we just continue to grow and support each other and find that fellowship that is just going to make us be everything that we're striving to be. That's all I have for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Thrower. Board, I have just a couple of items. One of them is to potentially ask the team that in the future, I know we received an extensive email about graduation calendar dates, but if we possibly could receive the baccalaureate calendar dates as well, collectively as a board, I think that would be helpful moving forward, just so we would, had no idea Reverend Cummings was speaking at a baccalaureate, but that would have been a wonderful time for us as board members to potentially support him. And so if we can also have those calendar items in the future, I think that would be a big help for us. I am grateful that we had the opportunity to attend so many wonderful events and have so many upcoming. This is an extensive calendar time where we're all struggling to add so many things to our calendars, and we're going to be crisscrossing and going to various schools together. And so the Fort King Heritage event, though not a school, is going to impact our students. And so thank you for mentioning that, Ms. Conrad, as well as the Hillcrest Art Show was spectacular, and that was my first time attending. So grateful for the amazing work that's being done in that very special place. It's the only way I can explain Hillcrest is it's just a special place, very special place. I also wanted to bring up something that a recent public comment had stated, requesting us to set aside Good Friday as a designated time that we would ensure in our future calendars that we might want to ensure is a day of remembrance or a day of recognition or something. And if the board would like to have that as a agenda item in the future, I did want to present that as an option for us. Or if there was some kind of consensus, I have assured this community member that at this point we've already approved the calendar for the 2023-2024 school year. But if that is a conversation that this board wants to collectively enter into as we calendar for future calendars, and I believe we've already recommended that the team bring us at least 2 years of calendars in the future, if not 3 years of calendars in the future. So if that's something we want to add to the calendar committee as a recommendation, I would want us to do that much sooner rather than later. So board, I just present that as an idea to you. We certainly do not have to talk about it today, but if you have future ideas about that particular comment from a community member, I am open to hearing what you have to say. I also have told our board clerk that we do need to have conversation upcoming about our advocacy chair, or our advocacy liaison through the Florida School Board Association. It's a conversation we have every June, and they will be asking for that in June. So perhaps this extra work session that we'll be having in June, perhaps we can go ahead and add that to when that will be coming up, whenever we schedule that. Because the advocacy committee liaison will need to be chosen from this board again. And the last thing that I will mention is actually in reference to the board comments that I made on Tuesday evening. Thank you to my fellow board members for inquisitively bringing them up. It's interesting whenever you read off of a script and then you go and kind of explain yourself when you're talking to fellow principals not fellow principals, when you're talking to principals about what those comments were. Some of the principals that I've spoken to in the last week and a half had heard the comments directly, and some of them had not. I received comments from principals such as, wow, I don't know that anybody's ever said something like that. Wow, I don't know that anybody's ever done anything like that. Had one principal say, that's exciting. Had another principal say, that's really interesting that, wow, thank you for taking your job seriously. I had another principal tell me, you know, while you're approving people line by line and reappointments one by one, there are grandfathered employees that I know right now I would like to get off my campus but don't have the way to do that. Had another principal talk to me about evaluations and how the rubric is not set up for them to actually be able to assign real scores. It's just a handful of conversations I've had over the course of the last week. While we have amazing, amazing educators doing amazing, amazing things, we do have some challenges in this district. We do have some gaps. Thus, the justification behind the comments I made as an individual board member last Tuesday evening, and I welcome further collaboration and conversation with my board on those items. With that, I have no further comments, and if there are no further comments from the board or the superintendent, we will be adjourned right at 11 o'clock a.m. Thank you so much.